ragazzi, welcome back to Calcio Culture. We apologize for our absence. We've been extremely busy at work, busy traveling. As you all know, we made a trip to Italy and we had an unreal time there. In our absence, though, we have missed quite a lot of news, a good number of games, a lot of competitions going on. So we have a lot to break down today. But as always, this is Vos, joined by my co-host Motts today. I have to say it feels pretty good to be back here. It has been almost a month now. It might be more than a month since we've been on here. We've really been slacking.
Has it really been more than a month? Oh my goodness.
It's pretty close.
Hello, paisanos. Just me today. We actually left Logs in Turin. I think he's probably making his way back to Milan though. But we had a great trip from the beginning, from getting upgraded on the flights to extra leg room. Shout out Vos. To the stadium tours to Lake Como. We did experience a little bump in the road with the Pope dying, but we made it work. To Turin, to Vincenzo is all a great trip. But glad to be back, like you said, and definitely glad to be back on Calcio Culture. We did miss some games, however, we were at some games as well. So that was a great experience. Gonna already want to go back.
Yeah, I already want to go back too. I keep looking at flights and stuff. It's really tough. But today, guys, just to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking, we're going to give you a little tasting of what we did do in Italy because it was really an incredible experience. We did, like Mott said, we went to some games. That was the first time I'd ever been to any European matches. I don't know about you, but incredible experience. I just want to talk you through a little bit of some of the stuff we did over there because I think everybody listening would find it interesting. They're going to be talking a little bit of Champions League, obviously some massive news there, a little bit of Coppa Italia, and really the body of today is going to be looking at the table. Only 3 games to go now, real business end. We kind of have an idea of what we think is going to happen, but for everybody, every team in the league now, a lot at stake. The end of the season is going to have a ton of storylines, and then going into the summer, we're going to have even more craziness. For me, I'm looking up and down the table. This summer is more important than I think a lot of summers that we've had in the past. There's a lot of things going on with every one of these teams, a lot of teams in like an evolutionary stage, I think. And it's been an exciting season now coming to an end. So we have a lot to talk about. But let's start with Italy, because Italy was amazing. We flew from New York straight into Milan. We landed at 9 a.m. First day was a great day. We brought the sun with us. It was supposed to rain every day. But first day we got in there, landed at 9. We were out until 1 or 2 a.m. and it started great from there.
Yeah, we definitely brought the sunshine. That was kind of the motto that we were telling people. Because the weather beforehand, like you just mentioned, said it was supposed to rain every single day. And Turin actually had a flash flood warning the week that we were going to be there. But it only rained 2 times when we were there. One time we slept through it because we were up till 6 a.m. And then the other time was right after the Coppa Italia semifinal game. But, I mean, all in all, fantastic trip. From the food, that was amazing. From the sightseeing that we did, from the games that we saw, the stadium tours, everything was amazing. It was a well-ran trip. I'd also like to give us all 3 a shout out. We did a great job on public transportation. However, we did have one small hiccup getting a ticket for not paying for the bus. But other than that, great job on the public transportation side of things. One thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was crazy, very interesting, and obviously made sense when I stepped back and thought about it. The San Siro, not your average stadium, very old, obviously, but if you're at the San Siro, you're either outside of the stadium, you are either in the staircase of the stadium, in the bathroom, or at your seat. Like there is no walking around the outskirts of the stadium, like under the stairs. Like
there's no concourse. There's no concourse, right? Like it's either there's a staircase to get to your seats. There's a bathroom on the staircase at some points. Some of them were overflowing, like they didn't even work. Or you're on the field, like you're actually on the field in the stands. Mayhem.
Yeah, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. They have one area for concessions, which is just mayhem as well because there's only one area of concessions. I was not expecting that. It was crazy. It was a cool experience. And then going to the Juventus Stadium, being much more modern and new, there was like the, what did you call it?
Encores. the area
Concourse.
like inside, but not quite on the stands.
Yeah, there was that. There was concessions inside the stadium, much newer. We were very almost on top of the players. They're very close to the pitch, very good atmosphere, like good like lights in a show almost with a
It was
sunset.
like just it felt like more, not quite like an NFL stadium, but I would say like similar to that, right? Like
Yeah.
in the United States, like very modern, like speaker systems, modern lighting, modern, like the nice, like it's easy to get around. They had everything, like big spaces, concession stands. Like there's a modern, amazing
Feels good.
stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can go to the Allianz, you have to go, because the difference from when we're at the Sun Siro, amazing experience at the Sun Siro. Like can't say enough. 80,000 people in there. It's so loud. It makes it so much better to watch the game on TV now. But now when you go to the Allianz, it's a little bit smaller, but the way it's set up, it's very loud still, and it does feel like you're actually on the field, like on top of the players.
Mhm.
I think we may have actually been further from the field when we were there, but it felt like we were way closer.
Yeah, especially when they were on. We sat on the left-hand side, so when they were on like our touch side, we were like like I could like grab them, even though we were slightly further.
Yeah,
Very
we had an amazing angle of Yildiz elbowing a guy in the face.
Yeah,
Me
that
and
made the
Logan
second
said it
half.
before they go into VAR.
Excuse me, that made the second half pretty tough to watch for them to defend for 45 minutes. But we had a great angle to the Kolomuani goal as well, which was nice. But just immaculate vibes. But the atmosphere. So we obviously went to a game on Easter. It was Milan Atalanta. Milan ended up losing that game 1-0. That atmosphere, to be honest with you guys, wasn't there. It was kind of dead, if I'm being honest. It was Easter Sunday. Milan didn't play well. Then 3 days later, we went to the Coppa Italia, Inter versus Milan, and oh my goodness, that atmosphere was insane. That was crazy. It was different. And one thing that we saw that was interesting that we didn't know, we probably should have known it covering the league, but Inter fans, or their what is it called? I always pronounce it
They're
wrong.
the Corva Nord.
Yeah, they do not really stand up or wave their flags until the 20th minute. And so during the game, the 20th minute happened, and it was like a throw-in. Like nothing exciting happened, and the Inter fans stood up and just went absolutely berserk.
Exploded. The stadium felt like it exploded. It was so
And
loud.
then
Because the whole
from
game we were
there-
like, oh, the Milan supporters and the Corva Sur are pretty loud. And then it was just like, boom.
And from there, they did not sit down or stop singing or screaming. It was 70 minutes of just straight going. Even though they were losing, they were down 3-0. Inter's fans did not stop screaming. That it was honestly, I think Logan said this at one point. It was tough to pay attention to the game at some points because of the two fan sections just screaming and singing at each other. It was an unreal experience. You have to go to a game there. Very, very, very crazy experience.
Yeah. And on top of that, we had great, like you said, we had great food. We had some aperitivo. If you guys don't know about that, go to Milan, experience it. It's my new favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
Been doing it every day since I got back.
Also, so another little cool part about the trip for the people that do not follow us on Instagram, you might not have seen this. We obviously were supposed to go to Parma Juve at Parma on Monday morning. We were at our coffee shop, our breakfast shop, on what was it, Shishu?
Yeah, the camera.
We went there every morning in Milan. And I'm scrolling on Instagram looking at stories, and unfortunately, the Pope passed away, and all the games on Monday got postponed. So that kind of, thank God we weren't on the train for that. But that did kind of throw a monkey wrench in our plans for the day. So we had to audible, pivot, figure things out. We went to a castle and a park in Milan, did some sightseeing. Then we decided to try to go to like a flea market. Turns out we went to the wrong spot. So we were just like, oh, let's just go to a rooftop bar. We're at the rooftop bar enjoying some nice spritzes, limoncello spritzes, Aperol spritzes, select spritzes. And we're about ready to go. Who walks in? Rafael Leao. Casually walks in. So Calcio Culture met Rafael Leao. I think there might be a collab coming soon. He did like us. He got a picture of his Logan, gave me a nice fist bump. Uh, Crazy experience. Probably the last person I expected to see at a bar the day before a
Right.
semi-final.
A derby semifinal 2 days before. Yeah, pretty insane. But overall, successful trip, right? I don't think we could have done anything better.
No, like, super
Maybe
successful.
gone a little less hard at the beginning.
Yeah,
We went pretty hard.
yeah. I started getting feeling slightly under the weather on the last couple of days in Turin, so we kind of had to pump the brakes there. But we went hard. We went to Lake Como, we went to Bellagio, we did Milan, we did the Navili, we did Torino. Torino also has just a million piazzas, like just so many squares. And then obviously Logan got to see Milan win, I got to see Juventus win. We saw a Milan derby, so just all in all, fantastic trip.
Yeah, I mean, highlight for me, I saw Bellanova, current favorite player in the league. So I was really put Leao in his back pocket too in that game. So that was good to see. But yeah, anybody going to Italy, have any questions, hit us up. Any suggestions we can also give you. We kind of got the lay of the land in Milan. So if you have any questions about Milan, just let us know and we'll figure it out for you. But to get into it, let's get into some footy mods. In the last 24 hours, we had one of the best games of football I think I've ever seen. I had people that don't really watch soccer actually texting me about it, saying how crazy it was, how much they loved it. And that was none other than the Champions League semifinal second leg in Milan, Inter against Barcelona. 4-3 game. Inter tied it, I think, with 2 minutes to go, 88th minute, off of an Cherby goal, insane to make it 3-3. Then an add-in time, Fortezzi gets it done, sends them through 4-3. Final aggregate, I think, was 7-6, which is
7-6.
unheard of.
It was virtually the same game. I want to take it a step further than what you said. I think probably the best, at least from what I can remember just off the top of my head and thinking about it, the best semifinal game or two legs in the Champions League in minimum the last 10 years. I mean, maybe there was a Madrid one that they when they came back against City. I don't know if that was quarterfinals or semifinals though, but these two games were virtually the same exact game, 3-3, 4-3. Come a goal to someone gets up 2-1 or 2-0, and then the other team has to come back. Just an all-out war, and you have to give the props to Inter. I do think Barcelona did do enough to win the game and go through, but I think Inter did as well. I don't think either of the teams really deserved to actually lose the game. And Inter just were the ones to sneak it out and squeak it out, but insane two legs.
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting about this is you see the two contrasting styles and realistically had the same result. Like Inter wanted to sit deep and counterattack. Barcelona wanted to be ball dominant and exert their will that way. And basically, they canceled each other out. We had 7 goals for Inter, 6 goals for Barcelona. And I think it just goes to show that there are different ways of playing this game, and you can be successful with both ways. This is now Inter Milan's second Champions League final in 3 years. I actually personally think this team is worse than the team that got to the final last year, or 2 years ago, and then lost to Manchester City. I think they were unfortunate 2 years ago that they ran into Manchester City because that was kind of like the peak of City at their power. They won the treble that year. So I like I think we'll do a breakdown, kind of preview that game in a couple of weeks, but I feel good against them going up against PSG. I think PSG are really similar to Barcelona, so they kind of have a game plan. Yeah, a little bit of a blueprint. I think that they're coming with a little bit different formation, but what's really going to be interesting for me in that game is the wing-back battle. It's going to be DeMarco or Carlos Augusto against Nuno or against Hakimi. I didn't even think about that. Hakimi returned to facing Inter. And the other side of things, it's going to be Nuno Mendes against Denzel Dumfries, or presumably Denzel Dumfries, who just had the craziest 2 legs ever and is probably the best wing back in the world right now. Following that, like he wasn't
a part of one goal. I think the Fortezzi goal for over the 2 legs, he was a part of every single goal besides the Fortezzi goal. Dumfries absolutely balled.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show they did miss him this year. He was in and out of the squad a lot, and if they have him, I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about what they're doing in the league and how things are shaking out, but I think it's a bigger loss than we even thought. Like, we knew how good he was, how important he was to this team, but the impact that he had, it's mind-blowing that a wingback can have that large of an impact on a game.
I think
especially when they're sitting back so far.
he has like 16 or 17 now with those goals or and goal contributions on the season, like some absurd number. But one thing I want to say about Inter, obviously like I'm a Juventini. There's a big rivalry. However, I support the league slightly more than your traditional Juventus fan or Italian fan. Um, and I do agree with you. This team, I don't think was as good as the team that made it to the Champions League 2 years ago, or even the team that did get knocked out by Atletico Madrid in the quarterfinals last year. But what I have to give this team credit for is when they want to lock in on a game, and they locked in on every single Champions League game this season. They didn't do it a lot in the league or in the Copa for reasons I don't know. When they locked in for 90 minutes, they got what they needed to get done. And I mean that, like Bayern Munich, they went down, or Bayern Munich tied it up on aggregate, and a minute later they scored a goal. They went down on aggregate to Barcelona, and a minute later they scored a goal. Like, they knew what they needed to do. And if you were to tell me before Barcelona and Real and Inter played, the aggregate over 2 games is going to be 7-6, I would have said you're crazy. And if it was, I would have said Barcelona's winning that.
Yeah, 100%.
Inter allowed, I believe, 4 goals or 5 goals total up until this point in the Champions League, and 4 of those goals were Bayern. Right, they allowed 1 goal in the coming games before these last 2 legs, or these against Bayern and Barca, and then in those legs the Barca scored 6 goals. Like, you didn't see that coming at all with how compact Inter is. And then to what's even crazier is they went goal for goal with Barcelona, even though Barcelona has such a high line. Did not see that coming. So they really shows you they could do it in both ways.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, the negative that I took away from these was they had a 2-0 lead twice, and then they had not 2-0. They had a 2-goal lead twice on aggregate, and they also had a 1 goal once, and they blew all 3 basically until they ended up winning. And on the bad side of things, that's kind of been the story all season in the league, where they've had leads against way worse opposition. They've sat deep, and they've given up late goals to drop 2 points, like very rarely, obviously, dropping 3. But we saw that. I think the one that always comes to mind is at the beginning of the season, they dropped points to Parma, which they shouldn't have. And you go through the whole season, and that's been the story of it. So I think that's what we can leave the Champions League where it is for now. Inter are in the final. And we'll talk about that in a couple weeks when we do have the Champions League final coming up. We'll give you a full preview of that. But we want to use this as a segue into the league, into the Scudetto race, because this is what we really want to talk about today. And we'll start with Inter Milan, even though they are in second place. We'll get to Napoli in a second. They're in second place. They're 3 points behind Napoli, and they're going to they have to go to Torino, come home to Lazio, and then go away to Como. At this point, their destiny is not in their hands. They need Napoli to drop 3 points. I think that's I wouldn't say highly unlikely, but this is probably the first time this season where they probably aren't going to win, is where I'm looking at it. I think it's highly unlikely that Napoli lose any of those games. I think it's possible they draw, and I think it's also possible that Inter drop points in any one of these games. I think Torino's a very difficult matchup still. Lazio has been tough for everybody to play against, and then Como's arguably, if not the hottest, the second hottest behind Roma.
Well,
so those are 3 different games.
I was just going to say, not to cut you off, with Como also, that the Champions League's coming up, the Champions League final coming up as well. So are they even just going to rotate as heavily as they did last time? So,
and then even beyond that, we've seen all season Inter struggle after big games, right? Like we saw, like they've struggled against Milan several times after having big Champions League games. We saw what happened in the Coppa Italia. They played the Coppa Italia second leg was one of the worst Inter performances of the entire season. I think they were completely out of that game. And now I think we have to look at this season as a whole for Inter. They are in a Champions League final. They lost the Supercoppa final to Milan. They got knocked out of the Coppa Italia to Milan. And now they're realistically going to lose the league, I would say. If they don't win the Champions League, is it a successful season? That's the trophy list. You got to 2 finals. You came in second in the league. You got to a semifinal in the Coppa Italia. And when you look at it like that, you're basically second place across the board. which is, I think if it's a different club for me, it's okay. But for Inter and where I would have expected them to be at this point, and this is going to kind of lead into a bigger conversation around where they are with the club, where they are with Inzaghi. But would it be successful for you, or do they have to win the Champions League? And even if they win the Champions League, is that enough for you?
I think if they win the Champions League, successful season, right? Especially because that's been what a lot of Italian teams have tried to focus on more and more over the last 5, 6, 7 years, rather than them only focusing on the league like they've done in the past. So if they win the Champions League, no matter if they came in second in the league and lost the Copa or lost the Super Cup and got knocked out to the Copa, successful season. That's kind of what they built this team for, to go try to win that Champions League. It's obviously built to win more. They were extremely close. Like, you talked to us when we were in Italy, they were steps away from a treble, right? Obviously, didn't get that done. But if they win the Champions League, successful season. If they do not, I think that you can't classify it as a successful season, but you also don't classify it as necessarily a failure, because they did make it to the Champions League final. That's not easy to do. I do think the league was bad, because I said it a couple weeks ago, or the last episode, or one of the last episodes, that nobody wants to win the league this year. Everyone was fumbling. When if you just take advantage of some games, Inter could very well have a 7, 10, 12-point cushion if they just played like they did last year. So I think that their biggest miss was the league, because this was a very, very winnable league in the Serie A. Napoli's probably going to win on like 82 points maybe. And Inter had like 97 last year. So like, it's a big drop off that way. So I don't think that you can label it unsuccessful if they don't win the Champions League, but I think you can label it unsuccessful. I don't think you can label it as like a failure of a season. We need to blow everything up because we didn't win a trophy, because you see what they're on the brink of with these players. They are on the older side, but they're just going to be, if they can just keep most of the guys, reload in some areas, they'll be right here again next year in all 3 competitions.
Yeah, and that kind of gets me into what I want to talk about. What I messaged you and Lokes about yesterday is, where are we at with Inzaghi now? Because for me, I think I fall on more the negative side than you guys. I guess the question really is his job safe? What results change? Where he gets sacked if they lose Champions League? If they win the Champions League, is there a different outcome? And just kind of want to get your thoughts there.
My personal opinion is, if I'm if I'm making the decisions, I'm not, win or lose, Inzaghi's my coach next year. I think Inzaghi has proved how good of a manager he is, being that they were so close to a treble, right? There's obviously areas where he needs to improve. Like, I didn't love, even though they did squeak out the win against Barcelona, I thought he was making too many defensive substitutions when they had their lead, and just allowing a Barcelona team to attack and get 3 goals. But we see what he does with tactics. Another thing is how they play is beautiful. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is when they want to lock in, and Inzaghi relays to them how important this game is, you see how good they are. He's also been with this group of guys now for 4 or 5 years. A lot of them are going to be coming back. I don't think you can get anybody better than Inzaghi, and I think he's proved himself. I do agree with your take on he should have one more in this window that Inter has in their reign right now. He should have more Scudettos. He should have more for sure. But I think that he's done a great job, and if you let him go, you're letting somebody go who's a proven winner in the league, proven to win in multiple competitions, which some managers can't do, that we know. And you're also sacrificing the way in which they play. And I think one thing that Inter fans and Inter supporters love to have over Juventus is that they play a beautiful style of soccer. They love that. And Juventus it's all that matters is winning the game, getting the points. And Inter, where that still matters, they also play a beautiful brand of football. And if you let Inzaghi go, you potentially abandon that.
It's a risk, but for me, it's a very difficult decision. I think, in my opinion, if they lose the Champions League final, you walk away from Inzaghi. I think if they win the Champions League final, there is still a discussion about letting him walk, and I think that's probably a hot take, and it is harsh. But the way that I look at this, when he took over the reins, Inter had just won the Scudetto. They were the best team in the league by a massive margin under Antonio Conte. That team was amazing. And then going into the next season, they were, I think it's hard to say they weren't the best team in the league. That was another season that was very similar to this one. AC Milan ended up winning the league that year. And I think across the board, especially on this podcast, we all kind of agree that Milan probably shouldn't have won it, right? They weren't good enough. And when I say it's similar to this season, nobody really wanted to win it. Inter had plenty of chances to take over, get that 6-point, 9-point, 12-point cushion and win it. They didn't. And we go back now. This year is the same thing as that. Inzaghi did win last year, which was big. The Napoli year, I'm going to say, is a wash because Napoli were just so much better than everybody. But when you look at it like that, this is Inzaghi's 4th season. He's got most likely have 1 Scudetto. He's going to have 1 Coppa Italia, 2 Champions League final appearances, and maybe 1 Champions League. So it's 3 trophies in 4 seasons. And if you had told me that when they hired him, I would probably say that's not enough. I think a very clear representation of where the club is at is sticking with him through this. I thought when he first came on, this is what we were talking about at the beginning of the season. This is the year, if Inzaghi does this, dynasty's going. Like you have 3 Scudettos in 4 years or 5 years, whatever it is. Should have 4. Should still have more. But 3 and 5, you go on. You're looking like going to be the best team again next year, and you go on. The difference is when we look at Juve. When Juve fired Pirlo, he had probably had better seasons than Inzaghi has had. He won the Coppa Italia, right? And then he finished in a Champions League spot and they fired him. Inzaghi had a bigger leash than that because Juve were so focused on that you have to win everything. And it's like Inter don't have that mindset yet. And the Scudetto piece of this is just inexcusable for me. And if I do have a biased opinion. I know like when Lokes is kind of on the other spectrum of things where for me it's win the league, anything else is a bonus for me. I think the Juve have a little bit different of a take because they won so many Scudettos and they're so far ahead and the Champions League has been so elusive for them that it is a priority. But for Inter, when the league is in your hands and you lose it, this is going to be probably the second time for Inzaghi. I don't know how you defend that. You have three times now. You should have won it, and you have done 1 time.
That's valid. That's very, very valid. Very valid. I definitely like Inter should have more Scudettos for sure. I think it's just if they can win the Champions League, they're gonna forget about that. But you make a valid point. I just like where would you go? Who would like? There's not many options. There's gonna be options out there. People are gonna get sacked. But do you feel confident that you're gonna get somebody who's going to be able to do a better job as Inzaghi and maybe sure is in your mind is a better job them winning this is like last year winning the Scudetto and then getting knocked out in the first leg of the Champions League knockout stage and whenever they did in the Copa, like is that better than this season when they're knocking on the door to the treble, like he's building stuff, so it's how you look at it.
Yeah, but at the same time, when I look at this, there's other pieces to the puzzle when I'm judging Inzaghi. Because again, this year they did a lot well, but then what did they do wrong? They lost a cup final to Milan. They got knocked out of a cup in a 2-leg semifinal to Milan, who are substantially worse than them, have been a bad. I would say Milan have been a bad team for most of the season.
They've never beat. They
haven't beaten this year. Yeah. So when you look at it like that, realistically, you should have 1 trophy in the bag in the Supercoppa. You definitely should have beaten Milan over 2 legs. The second leg performance that we saw at the San Siro from Inter was inexcusable. It looked like they didn't show up to play that game. And then we go now to the league, like we just talked about, and the Champions League is your only saving grace. And what I think will happen is if they do win it, Inzaghi will be safe because it's that big shiny trophy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard to defend to say he's a good cup, like a knockout tournament manager when you look at what happened in the Super Cup or what happened in the Coppa Italia. Granted, the Champions League is like the pinnacle. Like that's top trophy you can win. So I think I don't know. I think my guess is if they win it, he stays. If they lose, I don't know. I think it needs to be revisited. And on the piece of what do you do next, I have 100% faith in Morata to make the right decision and bring in the right person, because when they brought Inzaghi on board, Inzaghi wasn't
Yeah, he's from
Inzaghi.
Lazio. He just was a Coppa Italia guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. If I'm them, I keep him. I think he's good. I love the way they play. I think you got to value that. Maybe just because I'm a Juventus fan and we play like dog shit. They play beautiful soccer, and they were right there. Although I definitely agree with you on he should have had way more Scudettos, especially like because of what this season has been. The AC Milan season, just like you said, like these were kind of just like seasons where it was like you got to go grab that.
Mm-hmm.
The missed opportunities for Inter.
Definitely missed opportunities. Let's kick it over now to league leaders. 3-point cushion, arguably one of the best seasons of all time, regardless if they actually get this done or not. That's Napoli. Again, like I said, 3-point cushion. We have them tipped to be favorites at this point because of who they are facing next. They've got Genoa at home, which isn't the easiest thing in the world, but at home it makes a big difference. Then they go to Parma, who've been a little bit shaky recently, a lot of draws. And then they're at home against Cagliari, who have been up and down all season. So they have an easier schedule, 3-point cushion. I think they get this done. It would be a surprise if they don't win the league at this point, in my mind.
I'm in agreement, especially with Antonio Conte, knowing like how close they are and how ready he's gonna have those boys, and the way he's gonna relay the message of 3 games in our hands. All we need to do is win every game, and guess what? We have a trophy. I mean, even although we did see last week they struggle. I don't want to say they struggled against Lecce because they definitely handily won. Like Lecce didn't have many opportunities, but they only won 1-0, and it was on a free kick. It was a training ground goal, but it was only 1-0 against Lecce. However, if you take another step back and look at their past 4 games, they've gotten 4 clean sheets in a row. So their defense is locked in. Conte is locked in on relaying the message. And I would be very, very shocked given who they're playing. If they're dropping points, it's a tie. There's no chance that they fully lose a match. I mean, there's obviously a chance, but I don't see it. And I see all things pointing to Napoli winning, kind of doing what you just said Inter should have done, winning 2 Scudettos in the last 4 years, making their 4th Scudetto win, and Conte doing maybe his greatest achievement as a manager, taking a team from 11th to 1st in 1 year, losing their 2 best players, selling Cavada, not getting a replacement, having their probably marquee summer signing in Buongiorno in and out of the lineup for most of the season. It's been a pure master class from Conte. And one thing that I will say, and I want to give him his flowers here, which I haven't seen him do ever in his career, not at Chelsea, not at Inter, not at Juve, nowhere, that he's done at Napoli. And I think he's realized he has to do it because of the people at his disposal. He has decided this is the year where I'm going to be flexible. I'm not going to run a 3-5-2 and only a 3-5-2. I'm going to run a 4-3-3 when it's needed. I'm going to run a 4-4-2 when it's needed. I'm going to run a 4-2-3-1 when I need to. He's been changing his formation given the lineup that he can run with and the players he has on the pitch. He's even changing his formation in game, and this is something Conte's never done. And I'll even take it a step further. I think too many managers live and die by their formation. Like Thiago Motta on Juventus this year, 4-2-3-1 every single game. Last year, Allegri, 3-5-2, never mixing it up, never changing it up. I understand that when you do change up the formation, the guys have different rules and things that they need to follow. But these guys are professionals. They can do that. They've been playing this their whole life. You can coach them and challenge them, and Conte showed that. And it's one of the reasons why I think Napoli is in the place that they are, because he's been so flexible and needed to be so flexible.
Definitely. And I agree with you that more managers should do this. And it used to be a thing. I mean, I think early 2010s, it was a very normal to kind of switch systems, different games. And we've kind of migrated to this. You have a system, you stick by it, robotic football, not robotic football, but that kind of thing, right? Like Inzaghi, always same system. Pretty much every major manager is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it was Conte. I mean, this is really what the masterclass is, right? He had guys injured, he lost players, and just saw what he had at his disposal at any given game and changed up what he needed to do. I mean, at points he was running Lukaku and Raspadori as his two strikers in like a 4-4-2. At times he was playing a back three. You'd seen Spinazzola play as like a traditional winger at times. And not every manager would do that and be able to get the most out of his players and recognize the strengths of his players and put them in the right place to succeed. And kind of somebody you wrote down here, arguably the MVP of their season, I think personifies this more than anybody, is Scott McTominay. When this summer, coming out of this summer, I don't think anybody would have said the guy they need is Scott McTominay to play as the 10 and kind of act as a second striker. And realistically, they're winning the league because they bought him.
100%. And I think that once again just goes to show how good Conte is. And like Manchester United had this guy, 11 goals this season, a lot of game-winning goals this season from Scott McTominay, and he was warming the bench, barely could get in. If he did get in, he looked terrible. I think that's Conte recognizing a player, putting him in a position that he feels comfortable in, coaching him up, telling him where he needs to be, giving him pointers, playing around him. Like it's not just like, I know all the Prem people are going to be like, well, that shows how bad the Serie A is, but it's like Scott McTominay has said, it's actually much tougher to play in this league than in the Premier League. Granted, he's probably saying that because he's doing well, but like I think that goes to show Conte, and Conte's always been like this. He's always been, you get me this player, and I'll be able to get the most out of him and make him be better than what he actually is. He's done it with Lukaku, obviously, and he's done it with even Andrea Pirlo. He switched Pirlo's gameplay, but it's just Conte knows who he needs, how to relay the information and coach a player into getting the best out of him. And then I've said it all season, I'll say it again, he also just gets these guys to buy in and care about the team, the badge, and the guy next to them, which goes it goes so much further than people give credit in this game. When you're willing to die for the badge and give for the guy next to you, and he's able to do it. And I think that if they win the league, there's no question in my mind that Scott McTominay has to be the MVP of the season. Because he's won games for them. He has 11 goals. You take those goals out, Napoli are probably not even in the Champions League spot in his goals. It's got it. And then I'd also want to give flowers to somebody that you talked about in Rachmani. He's been kind of there, even in 2 seasons ago when they won the Scudetto.
Yeah.
Kim had kind of got all the praise. He won Serie A Defender of the Year. But Rachmani has been a stable pillar for the last 4 years, going to be part of the 2 champions or the 2 Scudettos if they do it this year, not missing a game, defending very, very strong. Like, I think those 2 players for me have been kind of the pillars that, in Zambo, obviously, the pillars that have launched Napoli to this spot.
Definitely, I agree. And one thing I did want to talk about, and I had pulled out, I listened to a couple podcasts, listening to some of the broadcasts on CBS. There's kind of been this discussion about how Napoli have played kind of terrible football all year, and how they're like I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but undeserving champions essentially, and because of the way they've been playing. And I don't see that at all. I adamantly disagree. I think They've actually played good ball. I think it's more attacking football than Conte's played in a really long time. I think it's more so they just haven't had the quality that some of the other top level teams have to really showcase that to the best of their ability. But when you look at this, fourth in the league in goals scored, number one in goals against, and then third in goal differential. So it's like, what more can they do to show that they deserve this? I mean, when you concede the least amount of goals in your top five in goals scored, that's a recipe for success. I mean, I think that's more goals than Conte maybe would have even anticipated scoring with this team. And if they did have better players, and if they do reinforce in the summer, I mean, they basically did this without any scoring, without anybody that is a goal scorer, period, in the team. Because Politano's not really a goal scorer. David Neres is
no stars. They lost their star.
Lukaku was their theoretical goal scorer, but he hasn't been that. So, I mean, if they had better players, maybe the football would have looked better. But I'm not going to sit here and say they played this uber defensive style. I mean, they played an offensive style. They brought a game to Inter Milan. And the fact that they were able to do that shows that they are deserving champions if they do get this done. And I don't think it is right to say they played one of our buddies, Packy, when Conte was the coach at Spurs, said he played terrorist ball. And I would say this is not Conte terrorist ball by any means.
So I definitely don't think that it's valid to say that they're undeserving because of the way they played. I think I just spoke about how they played all season and how they would be a chameleon and figure out the way they needed to play each game to win. But what I will say is, listen, this is what Conte does. Like, we know what Conte does, and we also talked about this in the beginning part of the season. It is an Italian league. That's what they do. They do defend, right? Their priority in Italy is defending. Guess what Conte did? He made them not only the best defense in Italy, they have the best defense in the top five leagues, allowing the least amount of goals in a season with 25, right? They have the same amount of goals that they had last year in 55, which just goes to show, like, Conte just strengthening the defense has helped them. But I don't think that it's undeserving. I think somebody that would say that is watching kind of what I said earlier in the season, saying no one in the Serie A wants to win the league this year. Like, Inter could have grabbed this by the balls, and same with Atalanta. They both could have grabbed the league by the balls and won it. However, if you look at other leagues as well, it's kind of the same across all other leagues. So I think that there's a part of it where, yes, you're right, they don't have the star level that everybody else has. But I also think these guys are getting worn out. Like, if you look at La Liga, Barcelona's on top with 79 points. Sure, they have a lot more goals, but Real Madrid don't have a ton. Like, they don't have a ton more than Napoli. They have like 10 more than Napoli. You look at the Prem, right? Liverpool's on top with 82. No one's even close to them. And Arsenal only have 64 so it's 9 more. So I don't think that they're undeserving at all. I think they're playing. It's very similar to all the other leagues in terms of goals and points. I think these guys are worn out. I think Napoli don't have the stars that everybody else has. And I think we knew what Conte was going to do. The first thing he was going to do was solidify the defense. This league is you win the league by defense. And Conte did that. They have the least amount of goals scored, not only in the league, like I said, but in all 5 European competitions, or all 5 European leagues. And that's what wins you the Serie A, and that's why they're in this position.
Yeah, I think deserving to be there. But I mean, if whoever wins it, we'll get into the gritty of it. I mean, on Monday we're going to talk, and who knows what's going to happen this weekend. I mean, Inter could win and Napoli could lose. I think that's highly unlikely that both of those things happen. But we're going to be here in 3 weeks, and we're going to be talking about who ultimately wins the Scudetto.
Mm-hmm.
But let's kick it off from Napoli now. There's a little bit of a gap here. There's the battle of the Scudetto between Inter and Napoli in 1 and 2. Then we have third place Atalanta, who were very much in this race for a really long time and ultimately have fallen out of it. They're on 68 points. How many points back are they? 6 points back from Inter. Yeah, so they're 6 points back from Inter. There's no realistic way where they make up getting into first spot. More than likely, they're not going to drop to 4. We would think they're
absolute
5 points
debacle. They've fallen to 4.
They're 5 points clear of 4, so they should be good there. So I don't want to overly talk about Atalanta because it's the season's kind of said and done. I think it's going to be more of a discussion of what the summer is going to look like for them. But for me, disappointed. I think if there was a year for them to have won it, it was this year. And I think this is ultimately going to be the downfall of Gasparini. And I think Gasparini is the reason they got to this position and were able to win, could have won it this year. But he's also the reason that they're not going to do that. He has said a lot of bad things this year and really ruined the good vibe that they did have going. He's called out his best player in Ademola Lookman a bunch of times. He said some outlandish things about the club. Outlandish, in my opinion, like Matsu had said here. He's saying that finishing in a Champions League spot is like one of his greatest achievements with this team, which I adamantly disagree with. I think this is a team that could have competed with anybody in the Champions League. I think this is a Scudetto winning team.
He also made it to the semifinals at Atalanta not so long ago. So like that's
and a far worse. I think a far worse squad too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is the best squad Gasparini's ever had. And I again, just to wrap on them for me, I would like to see them cut Gasparini in the summer. I think the cycle's over. I think he's burned too many bridges in terms of the roster that they do have. And for me, it's a very scary time for Atalanta because if they do move on from Gasparini, it becomes a question of who is staying. And it could be a mass exodus. It could be everybody does stay. And then if they add a couple more pieces, they could be right back up here next year. I think that's highly unlikely because I think a lot of these players did come to play for Gasparini. I think Bellanova is probably the best example of that. He was somebody that pretty much could have gone to any club he wanted, and I guess he ultimately picked Atalanta. So they're going to be one of going to be monitoring in the summer. But I don't really have much more to say about them at this point. Third place is pretty much, they've got it.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, it's a debacle if they fall out of third and don't get a Champions League spot. I just totally disagree with Gasparini saying this is his best achievement. But I do think that they, in my opinion, I thought that they weren't going to finish in a Champions League spot. I thought the Coupe Miners was going to be was a big hole of him leaving. Scamacca and Scalvini both missing half the season, or turns out to be the full season. So I think that they overachieved a little bit in my eyes, but I do think that it's going to be very scary in the summer because Lookman seems like he wants to leave. Gasparini, everything that he's saying in the media, just like you said, hints to him leaving, although I don't know where he would really go right now. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think they probably have 3 locked up. However, we've seen crazier things happen. And
Especially from that.
Yeah, I would love if they fall out and they lose every game, but I don't necessarily see that happening. But we will see what happens. But you're right, the summer can be scary for them.
Yeah, and to wrap on the summer being scary, we already have Ederson linked away. Retegui is inevitably going to have suitors coming to get him. I would be shocked if Lookman is on this team next year, no matter what happens. And then you probably go through the team and other people are going to attempt to poach them. Full stop. So it's going to be scary. But that gets us out of 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 is its own deal. Now we have an insane battle for European spots, and that's 4, 5, and 6. 4 is Champions League, 5 Europa League, 6 Conference League. Little snafu in there I have to mention. If you win the Coppa Italia, you automatically qualify for the Europa League. If you have already qualified for the Europa League, then an additional spot is added for the Europa League. So 2 teams would be in the Europa League and 1 team would be in the Conference League. And ultimately, 7th place gets you Conference League, 6th place gets you Europa League. So that is something we have to keep in mind because the 2 teams in the Coppa Italia final are Milan and Bologna. And there's a realistic chance that Bologna finish in a Europa League spot and also win the Coppa Italia, which would then add another spot. But I think for this discussion, let's just assume 4, 5, and 6 are the only spots available. It's actually an insane race.
Yeah, it's an insane race. This is why we love the Serie A. There is 1 point separating 4 to 6, and then there's 4 points separating 4 to 7. So it's anybody's race really between or no, I lied. There's 4 teams with 1 point and then there's 5 teams with 4 points. It's really anybody's race. There's teams obviously that are much hotter than others within this 1 point, but it also seems like, not seems like, it is, for the most part, these teams are all playing each other right at the end of the season. So these games matter. They're high stakes games. And then also a lot of these teams are playing teams that are also not only fighting for the Champions League spots, just like I said, they're playing each other. They're facing relegation teams, which we all know when you place a team that's fighting for relegation, they have a lot to play for and they're going extra hard and they're extra locked in. So there's a lot at stake in these games. These final 3 match weeks are going to be very crazy.
Yeah, just so before we get it, we're going to talk team by team. I think that's the best way of doing this, Mods. But just to bring you through it, in 4th place, Juve on 63 points. 5th place, somehow, Roma tied with Juve, 63 points. I don't know how it happened.
Unbeaten since like December.
Lazio in 6th, tied with Juve and Roma on 63, ahead of Roma. Or no, behind because it's head-to-head, right? It's not goal differential for here?
So, no, right now it's goal differential. But if they end on even points, it goes to head-to-head.
So Lazio are tied with those two. Bologna are then in 7th on 62 points, so 1 point behind. And then Fiorentina in 8th on 59 points, 4 points behind Juve, Roma, Lazio. And then we're going to throw them into this because of who they are playing. Milan on 57 points. So realistically, 6 points off of a spot. But notably, they're playing Bologna and Roma, who are both above them. So a real chance of actually breaking into this, although we would say they are probably the worst of these teams. They are, I think, definitely the worst of all the teams that we're talking about right now. But with that being said, let's start with Juve. Mods, these are your love. We saw them in Italy. We went to the Alps. We went to Turin. We had some bra, and we watched them.
Yeah. This is, I mean, Juventus have their destiny in their hands. Granted, they are tied with Roma and Lazio. However, they're playing Lazio this week. So if they win, they kind of can knock Lazio down. And then it's just Roma that they have to deal with. And they obviously aren't playing them. But then if they can just take care of business against Udinese, which I think will be tough, however, they are home. And then Venezia, they'll qualify.
At
right?
Venezia.
It's a very tall task for a team that, since Tudor's appointment, has not scored a goal in the second half. However, I do think, and I think you agree, they have looked much better under him. But then we saw against Bologna, they were once again very, kind of looked like Thiago Motta attack, very sterile. The goal that they scored was a clear goalkeeping error. Bologna deserved to win that game. And we have to mention this. I'm not trying to play the Juventus victim card. I don't think I mentioned it once this season, but their injuries have just stacked up. Cambiaso,
oh my God,
he's out for he's going to be out for the game. I'm just saying, like, that you have to mention the amount of injuries. Did you see their lineup on their bench against Bologna? I'm not making it as an excuse.
Yes, they've had a deep the bench has been an issue, but I would say starting 11 wise, they've had pretty much everybody outside of Browner.
Coop Miners is injured right now. Vlahovic is injured right now. Cambiaso is
not even good.
I mean, we have a ton of injuries.
Yeah, you do have a ton of injuries.
We play. Gotti's injured right now. We don't have a. We have.
That is true. No, that's true. That's true. Gatti was phenomenal before.
We're not using it as an excuse. I'm saying, like, that's going to make it this so much more tough for Juventus, and Juventus need to qualify for the Champions League, because if they don't, it can be selling Yildiz. Dusan's obviously gone, but then Di Gregorio might be gone because you can get a profit for him. They'd have to sacrifice players, and then they're not going to be able to bring in these names that they're linked with. So it's do or die for Juventus. And the way that they have been playing, even with Tudor's appointment, it's looking like they're going to drop points and trend out of the top 4. And I'll be very sad and very, very upset. But I'm being realistic, and that's what I think is going to end up, unfortunately, happening. Although they have the Juventus DNA, and they know Tudor has that, and he knows what it takes. These players, when it comes to big moments all season, besides the Leipzig game, they have shrunk in the big moments. They've been afraid of it, and I don't see anything that tells me it's going to change this time around. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I think the Lazio game is I don't think I know. The Lazio game is the biggest game. If we tie that game, we're done. If we win that game, we have a chance. Pending on that result is going to determine where Juventus finish.
I mean, what I will say is, of all these teams, they have arguably the easiest schedule, I would say, which works in their favor. So I think if you drop 3 points, Lazio, you're dead. Definitely. That's it. Like, you cannot lose
I
that
even think if
game.
you tie,
I think a tie might get you there, though.
I
If
don't
you
think so.
win the
Dude.
other
You're
two.
talking about Roma's tied with on the same points. They have not lost a game since
I know, but
December.
Roma have 3 very difficult games.
Dude, I don't think so. Like, I think Torino, they get done at home. Milan have nothing to play for at that point in the season. It's after the Coppa Italia. They're not getting a Champions League spot. If they win the Coppa, they've already qualified for the Europa League spot. So they could just be like, let's put the kids out there. And even if they put their guns out there in Rome, with the way that they've been playing, I back Rome every time. And even in Bergamo, they haven't lost. Not only haven't they lost, they barely concede goals.
Yeah.
Like they just
they're
have
very
a
good.
great defense. And
So
so
then
I back Roma to get minimum 7 points there. 7 points minimum.
That's true. That's
So
true.
then
That is true.
so you have to go get all 9 if you're Juventus, because I don't know. We have to do a little bit more research on who has the head-to-head if it's tied at 70. So if Roma's going to get minimum 7, you have to get all 9 to take the spot. So it's gonna be crazy. And I think that I don't want to jump around here, but I think Lazio have the toughest road with Juve and then Inter back to back there. So it's going to be tough for Lazio to get in that 4th spot but if they get the 3 points against Juve, then Inter might also be resting with the Champions League. So there's so many moving parts to this last 3 games that can play a factor in this, that can help or hurt some teams that really are all dying for the Champions League spot.
So then, question for you here, because I don't think we need to look at this as like what's successful season for Juve. We know that they need to finish in 4th. They need to finish in 4th for the implications of who they may lose. This is something that I haven't thought about until literally we were just talking. Is this team overachieving? Like, when you look at what they spent, it's like, oh my God, they spent all this money. But are those players good enough to wear this shirt? And like, where they're at now, could they have gotten any further than this? Like, were they good enough to finish above 4? I don't know. Because when you look at it, for me, the only 2 players that seem to have the quality to be in a Scudetto winning team that they signed this year, Kefren Turam and Renato Vega.
Well, Renato Vega, they didn't even sign.
And they're not even signed.
Kalulu can be in the Scudetto winning team for sure.
But
he wasn't
even then, I love Kalulu. But Kalulu should not be a starter in a Scudetto winning team.
I disagree. He's very, very good. He's been one before on a team that let 10 goals in the second half of the season. I think those 2 are the only players that have had consistently good season, and I think that they're underachieving no matter what, especially with the money they spent. Right? They just bought Douglas Luiz for $50 million, who didn't miss a game and now can't stay healthy. Who's commenting on Instagram about that? So I also think that Juventus medical staff should be investigated, because if you come to Juve, you get injured. Like, it's just
I have been saying this for a long time, that they do a terrible job getting people into shape. The quintessential example of this is Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie should be a brick shithouse at this point, and he's I don't even
he's
know.
fat. He's overweight playing soccer, running around. But so, you signed Douglas Luiz, you signed Coop Miners, who had an amazing season last year. Who else did you get? Juan Cabal got injured. There's more people I can't think of. Conceição on the loan.
Nico Gonzalez is kind of a question mark.
But so, like, Nico Gonzalez has been there. He's been in the league. I don't love him. I didn't love the signing, but it doesn't matter. You spent 130, 140 mil, and last year you had 71 points, and so you've now spent on that, and now you're at 63. So no, they're not overachieving. They're definitely underachieving. I don't think that they should have been competing for the Scudetto at all. But once again, there was a point in time when Juventus was 4 points off the first place, and they just kept drawing, and they didn't go grab the game by the balls or grab the league by the balls like any other team did. So these guys are by all means underachieving. They're all injured. They all are afraid of the moment. None of them care for the badge besides like Yildiz, Thuram, Kalulu, who's still on loan, and Di Gregorius had a good year. So they need to take a step back and really think about what they need to do moving forward. In order to get that off on the right foot, they need top four. Need.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think what they've missed, and what I would probably say this comes back to is Giuntoli, is they lost that DNA, that Fino alla fine.
He sold anybody he
They
wanted.
did not, yeah, and they didn't replace it. Like, I think this is what we said with Conte. Like the psychological side of the game means something, and they lost that psychological edge that Juve had for the last 15, 20 years. And I think to what we've seen, Tudor is a step in the right direction. He very clearly has a mentality that he's trying to get across. And I think a great example was that we talked about it when we were at the Juve game. When they were warming up, he was fully observing what every single player was doing in warm-ups. And what he comes out and says in the press conferences, completely different from we saw from Thiago Motta. And it's starting to be in the right direction. We see Chiellini now getting more and more involved. He's at every game now, talking with the board members. They need to build on that. And that's going to set them in the right direction, because I do agree with you. I think the quality is there. But they need the guys that can get people motivated to get it done in the easy games, right? Or even the big games, they don't even get it done right now. But it's crazy to me, because like I feel like next year, like they're kind of right in it again if they keep everybody and add a striker. Who's to say they can't win the league?
There was Dybala just came out with an interview that when people came to the Allianz Stadium in Turin, when they were in the tunnel before they walked out, you could hear people saying, "We know we're gonna lose. We just hope we don't lose by that much." Not obviously that wasn't like Champions League. Those were lower level teams, lower Serie A teams that they just knew that they were gonna lose. Now you come to the Allianz, we can go win, or maybe we can't go win. We can tie and get somebody to get a red card and get under their skin to show that we can compete, just like Monza did. So it's a total different mindset when you go into Turin and just play Juventus now than it was 7-10 years ago, and it's because of that leadership, like you said. And because of that, I think that's the reason why they do not get it done. And then the team below them that has their identity, has the leader, has a style of play, and can read the game and make the small, simple changes when needed, in Ranieri and Roma, are going to get it done, even though they do have somewhat of a tougher schedule. I think they will finish in that fourth spot, and they will finish the season. They will finish 2025, hopefully I don't jinx them, unbeaten since December 18th and qualify for the Champions League. And I think, talked a little bit earlier about Conte and his greatest achievement possibly. Is this better than Ranieri winning it with Leicester? Like they were 4 points off relegation.
No, it is not better, but it's not better for one reason. We all had Roma finishing top four, I think, at the beginning of the season, because we knew what they could be, and Ranieri has brought that to light. I think I probably agree with you. I think they blow the doors off of Milan. Atalanta is going to be tricky because I'm not sure how motivated that team is going to be to go get it done. Torino, I think they'll beat, although in the summer, I'm going to talk about Torino a lot because I'm really excited about them for next year. I am. I literally have been thinking about Torino nonstop. But Roma are the best team in the league right now, like, which is insane to say. Like, they are the best team in the league.
Hottest team in Europe.
If the season had started in December, they would have won the league. This is what we thought they were. I think the crazy part about this is the players that are in the starting 11 are not the players that we would have anticipated being their best lineup, and now they are. I would agree with you. I think this is a team most likely to finish 4. I think this is a team I would like to see finish 4 because if they get Champions League, I think they can do a little bit more recruiting in the summer, and then this is a very scary team come next season if they hire the right manager, which they've proven to not do correctly in the past. And yeah, Claudio Ranieri deserves all of the credit. I don't even give credit to anybody else. I think another thing that I've talked about a couple times before, and I think has even come more to light over the last 3 to 4 weeks, is the players that they have Ranieri has developed into being starters now is going to pay dividends for the next 5 to 7 years probably. And that was accelerated when I said last 3 to 4 weeks by the Dybala injury. This is the best football Sule has ever played, and he is the best player on the pitch when he's out there. He has been instrumental in winning all the games they've won over the last 3 to 4 weeks. He understands more what he needs to do. Like when you watched him at the beginning of the season, he would get the ball on the wing, he would get the ball slightly inside, and it was like crazy, just be direct, try to get things done. He lost the ball a lot. He looks more like Dybala now to me. He's coming inside and receiving the ball to link up play. He doesn't need to win the game on every time he touches the ball. He's just understanding it more, and I think that goes to Ranieri putting players in the right position and also having the balls to bench players like Pellegrini and Cristante. Granted, they've come back in the team more over the last couple of weeks, but in my mind, both of them are not good enough to start for this team come next season. I think it's a drop-off when they do play, and they're really fucking good.
I think Sule has shown improvement for sure and looks much better in this part of the season, in the business and in the beginning. But I think there are 3 players that Roma have had at play every single game and that pull the strings and keep them in every game, win them the games, and that those 3 players, I'll start from the back. Their goalie, Svilar, nasty, amazing. Indica doesn't miss a single game or a minute, and then Kone. Those 3 players solidify them. They allow them to be in every single game, and then they get a goal from somebody. They get a goal from Dovbyk. They get a goal from Shomurodov. They get a goal from Sule. They get a goal somehow, some way. But those 3 guys keep them in the game. They're their heartbeat. They are very, very solid. And having a goalie being able to win you games is going to be a great thing come the business end of the season, because just like you said, you need a goalie to go win you some games, and there's always a chance at the end of the game that desperate team has. Svilar's been the guy to put all of those away and not let one in the net. And I think he's the goalie of the season. I think Indica.
I just agree strongly.
I do. I think Indica has a shout for defender of the season, and Kone is in 100,000,000% in my team of the season in the midfield. I think, and those 3 guys they played every game, they've been in every game, and they haven't been unbeaten since.
That's true, but what I will say about Svilar is, I think he made some big mistakes this year that he is never going to make again. And I think after this season, we can talk about him as maybe goalie of the season. I'm not going to say that yet. I think
we have. Well, no,
I think De Gea has been lights out. Like he has stolen games for Fiorentina all season. And Svilar has lost some games for Roma this season.
Yeah, but
most notably, the Napoli result was because of his idiot.
Yeah, but that was
play.
pre-Ranieri. That doesn't count.
It does count. De Gea's been good all season. But yeah, I think building on to next year, I think you'd hit the nail on the head. Indica, I've been talking about. I mean, I've been saying he should be team of the season for a really long time now. He's been I would say the only guy, because he was in the lineup even before Kone was playing.
Yeah,
he has been the one bright spot the entire season. Yeah, I think regardless of what happens this year, I think they'll be disappointed if they don't get any European spot. I think that's highly unlikely. They're going to finish 4, 5, 6, and I think they'll be okay with either one. Champions League is obviously, like, now that they're here, they should get it. They're the best team here. But if they don't, I don't think it's the end of the world. What I'm looking at is, again, towards next season, I think we're going to see a much better Dovbyk next year, and we kind of what you pointed out, Dovbyk has gotten it done. Like, when they need somebody to score a goal, he's popped up. but I definitely don't think we've seen the best of him. And
Popped up
kind of
last
going
week.
in, yeah, exactly. Now going into next year, we talked about this with so many players. You need to give guys a year. He's gonna have a year under his belt, a very difficult year that turned into a positive year, which sets him up for success next year. And if you have a
Yeah.
dangerous Dovbyk, then now your spine of your team is Filar, Indika, Kone, Dovbyk. I mean,
Bootleg.
that's that is a very dangerous team. And for me, yeah, like you said, these guys should finish four. They're the best team of the four here, 4 or 5 here, and they have a hard schedule, but it shouldn't matter because they're the best. Let's flip it over now to their inner city
Wait, one
rival.
more thing I do want to say, and this will be a good transition. I said, I think I want to,
You
I
did,
got to go
man.
back and
You did that.
listen
You said this
next,
a long
maybe
time ago.
20, 21, even when Roma was way down there. Roma are going to finish higher than Lazio. They're officially above them in the table. They have a slightly easier schedule than Lazio. They are in spitting distance to get this done, to get what I call done, and I really hope that they do. And
And
so
what
to
did you call them?
transition to Lazio, they have
Mott's called that
what I
Roma
mentioned
finish above
earlier as the
Lazio in like
toughest
match week
schedule,
21. It's
with
looking good. Roma
Juve
are better than Lazio at
come
this
to
point
them,
for
and then
sure.
they go to Inter, and then they play Lecce at home. Um, but listen, even though Juventus are going to them and they are struggling, Tudor knows Lazio. Juventus have the DNA. Can Lazio get it done? You've been hot on Lazio all year, so what are your thoughts?
I think Lazio are better than Juventus. I think they have less quality. I think they have a better coach. I think they care more about every game they play in, and we've seen that all season. And since they got Tati Castellanos back, they're a different team again. I mean, that has been the single most important player to this team the entire season. When he doesn't play, they're not very good. When he does play, they are like a top 5 team. And I don't see a way Juventus beat them at the end of the day. They aren't going to beat them. Lazio is very good at getting draws. They play a very difficult 4-4-2 to break down, and they counterattack well. They possess the ball well. I think their midfield is better than Juventus's. I think Tati Castellanos has been just as good as Colomwani the entire, like, you can say, like, Colomwani, is he a better player than Tati Castellanos? Probably, yeah. But Castellanos has been exceptional all year. I think Zaccagni and Isaacson are better than any winger that Juve have thrown out there all season. Like, again, we could say Yildi's ceiling is better. Nico Gonzalez is, like, historically better. But those two guys have been lights out. And then the defense has just been much better than everybody expected. So I think at worst, this game for Lazio is a draw. The Inter game is going to be tough for them. And then I see them beating the piss out of Lecce at home to end the season. So I think they get... it's hard to say how many points they get because I don't know how many points they need to get in Europa League, but I see them in 5, honestly.
I see them getting 5 points max out of these 2 games. I think the best case scenario against Juventus is a draw. Best case scenario against Inter is a draw, and then best case scenario is win against Lecce. That's 5 points, 68. So I think that I don't know where that lands them, but I think that that's where they finish is 68 and 5 points. And I think whether they finish in Champions League spot, whether they finish Europa, Conference League, I think for my eyes, for Lazio, they can view it as a successful season because they lost all their pillars. Everybody was like, they're not doing anything. And somehow they've been in this race the entire time. They very well could finish in the top 4. And that would be a huge accomplishment for them for how many players they lost. And last year, they finished 7th and 61, right? So they've already have more points than last year with all those players leaving and what we didn't know what they were going to be. And if they finish in 7th and they have a Conference League again, they can, or they were in the Europa League this year, actually. If they have Conference League, they have at least a European competition, and they can kind of hold their head on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't really have much more to add there. So we can kick it on to 7th place, Bologna. They're 1 point off of Juve, Roma, and Lazio. They played Milan on Friday, which is fucking nuts. So they played Milan on Friday. Then on Wednesday, they play the Coppa Italia final. Then they go to Fiorentina, and then they host Genoa at home. Really hard schedule. Very,
Yeah,
very,
tough
very hard.
schedule. Here's what I want to talk about with Bologna, and I'll get your opinion on it. Bologna have had an incredible season, obviously. I believe they're going to have finished with more points than they did last year, or they're projected to. 68 points last year on 62, so right in the middle there. But the players have came out, said how much they prefer Italiiano to Motta. They're in the Coppa Italia final on the verge of something they haven't done in I don't know how many years, with Champions League right in their grasp as well. But my question to you is, if they do not finish in a Champions League spot and they do not win the Coppa Italia, can we view this as a successful season for Bologna?
I would say yes. And I say that because when you look at the season as a whole for Bologna, they started pretty poorly. They were never, I wouldn't say Bologna were ever bad, but they were kind of the worst part of Italiano's Fiorentina at the beginning of the season. A lot of possession, very few goals. And over the course of the season, they have gotten better and better and better and better. And arguably now they play the best football in the league. They are one of the hardest teams to play. I don't think anybody wants to play Bologna. I don't think you feel like you're going to win when you play Bologna. So for me, the progress has been enough from a manager perspective in Italiano. The players are clearly liking what they're seeing, and I think to hold the bar to what happened last year was never realistic. I think it was always a goal to recreate last year. Granted, there was 5 European spots for Champions League last year, which is not the case this year. If they finish 4 or 5, I think you're happy with that. If you finish 6 or 7, I think it's also okay. This is a very dangerous team, and I would be very surprised if anybody at Bologna is going to classify this as a failure if they don't make a Champions League spot. And I think getting to the Coppa Italia final on its own is a major achievement for this club. Like they managed 3 competitions this year for a team that's pretty hard. And they didn't make the knockouts, but they were close in the Champions League. Like they started really bad, like I said, but things have gotten better for me. No matter what happens now, it's been a successful season. You're in a Coppa Italia final. You're competing for a European spot. You cannot ask much more of this. And it's another one, depending on what happens in the summer, they could be very dangerous next year. If they keep everybody, they're going to be better. And if they add anybody, they're going to be really, really scary. And that makes me think of something I forgot to kind of bring up. And I wanted to talk to you about this, and ideally Logs, if he was here. Do we need to rethink what is a successful season yet for every club? Because top 4 used to be realistically like 5 teams that were 100% like you should finish top 4. And now we're in the point where AC Milan's in 9th. And everybody above them kind of deserves to be top 4, depending on what happens. Like, do we have to shift what we think is success? Like for
I don't think
Juve,
you can, because
it's tough,
for those 3
though.
teams, it is tough. It's tough, but you have to do it for Juventus, Inter, and Milan. It's top Champions League or bust. Just because of the money it brings into the clubs and the players you can attract. But a team like Bologna, whether they win the Coppa Italia or not, this is a successful season for them. They got picked apart in summer, and no one expected them to be there. I think me and you had them kind of still being what they are now because they have good players and they just formed a very strong team and they play like a team. But no one expected them to be in the same position when they lost their striker and Xerxes, their best defender in California, and their manager, right? And they're here now. The one thing I'll say about them, and not really about Bologna, is more about Italiano, is if they don't win the Coppa, this is just kind of what Italiano does. Like, doesn't win trophies and gets you in 7th place. Like, he did that with Fiorentina for 3 or 4 years until they were like, all right, it's time for a new person. So that's the one thing where I'd be a little skeptical of. But I think the style of play, the way in which they played this year, they have things to build on if they can keep their squad together. Because I think it's got to be, like, someone has to go get Lukumin or Cellini. Like, someone has to go buy those. Those guys are so good.
And Ndoye, like,
And yeah, in Doran as well. Correct. And then you have Castro as well, who young player. I think he needs to prove himself one more year, but could be gone in the summer if someone wants to take a bargain. So they have a great team. It's just Italiano, kind of this is what he is. This is what he does in terms of like seventh and no trophies. And then I know that was a two-part answer, but for the big teams, you can't rethink it just because of the players you want to attract, who you want to compete with in terms of the brand name like Inter, Juve, Milan. You want to be able to buy or get the same players that a Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, City can attract. Maybe it's tougher to compete, but if you don't shoot for 1, 2 every year, then they're gonna fall behind.
Yeah, I agree. And I think ultimately this year was always, for Italiano, it would have to go very wrong for him to get fired. And I think next year is going to be more, we need to see a step forward. And we've seen a step forward this year. It just hasn't turned into the league table yet because of there was a long runway, like I said. But yeah, I agree with you. It's been a great season for them. Moving it on, 8th place, we got Fiorentina on 59 points, 3 back from Bologna, so a little bit outside looking in. They've got Venezia, then Bologna, then Udinese. I would say at Venezia, at home against Bologna, at home against Udinese is not the easiest.
Also, they have the Conference League Real Betis, which they're down 2-1 on aggregate right now.
So for me, this is, I don't think they're going to move from the spot, personally. I think this is where they're going to end. But for them, I would say successful season because of what the best version of Fiorentina we've seen this year is probably as good as Bologna has been this year. They were very electric at different points. They were another one that were very much plagued by injury for a long time, most notably in Gudmundsson. Kolpani never really got going this year. A lot of different things like that. Granted, they had an overperforming Moise Kean, but I think Palladino of all the managers here is the most immature, and we saw that this year. And kind of what we've seen out of this team, and I realized it over the course of this last weekend, is teams like Roma, teams like Lazio have had a way of getting it done when they play poorly. Fiorentina aren't there yet. They either win comfortably or they really struggle in games. And that's has to do with the kind of a younger squad, younger manager. And I think that's why they're going to stay right here where they are, because they haven't pulled off those surprise results enough, or when you play bad, getting results. And I think they ultimately deserve to be in this 8th spot. And again, is it as successful season as Italiano had last year, winning the Conference League?
No, they didn't win. They lost in the
yeah, sure. Good
in the
point.
final.
Good point.
I think I agree with your points in terms of like this is a big step for Palladino, a step that I think was justified. Young team with Fiorentina. Gudmundsson didn't do much in terms of just because he was injured. The same with Kolpani, but they played good football. They played great football. They've had just the same amount of points as last year as well. So they're probably going to finish higher in points, playing better football. I don't know if the Fiorentina fans will be thrilled with this because they've been in the Conference League every year and they might not be this year. But this is definitely a building block for them, and they're just going to have to try to keep Moise Kean, because Kean goes, then it's like that's a lot of goals they have to replace. But I think this is a very, very good building block for Palladino. You've seen the highs of Fiorentina and what they can be, and you've seen the lows in their inconsistency, right? So if they had a more experienced team, I think they are right in this 62, 63 spot, which is only 4 points back. So they're still technically in it, but I totally agree with you. I don't see them making a jump into 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah, that ultimately brings us into 9 with AC Milan. 57 points. They're 5 points off of Bologna in that Conference League spot. 6 points off of the lead. They've got Bologna at home, then they go to Roma, and then they play Monza. In the middle of that, they also play the Coppa Italia final, which is next week. Terrible season for them, and I think they're bad. I think they're very bad.
So you think this isn't, if they win the Coppa and they have 2 trophies because they finish in 9th, unsuccessful season?
Yes. And I base that off of the football that we've seen. It has been abysmal time and time again. They beat Inter in the Coppa Italia semifinal, and I think that was more Inter not showing up than them playing well. When we watched that game, they won 3-0, and the first thing I said when we left was I don't think they played all that well. I think Inter just played very poorly. in games that they've gotten results this year, they've played bad and somehow won. That has been the story of the last 2 months. They go down 2-0 and then somehow win 3-2 or tie it 2-2. I have nothing good to say about this team. When we were in Italy and we watched them play Atalanta, I said they are actually garbage. I have nothing positive to say about them, and I think they deserve to be in this place. I think they are the worst of all these teams by a pretty substantial margin. And yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Every week we've come on here and we've talked about Milan the same exact way under Fonseca, under Conceição, and nothing has changed. And we're 35 games in, and we're still in the same place.
Yeah, I would agree. It's unsuccessful only because they're also in ninth. A team like Milan, who they won the Champions League before they won their last Coppa Italia. Like, they don't hang their hat on the Coppa Italia, and they only have one star, right? They're still searching for their 20th Scudetto. They don't hang their hat on winning the Serie A. They for the last 20 years have hung their hat on, we're good in Europe. That's our competition. We have the most Champions League trophies in the league. That's where we hang our hat on. I don't think necessarily they needed to finish in top 4 if they get 2 trophies to find it a successful season. But I think how they're in ninth, even if they get the 2 trophies, you can't look at it as a success. I think if they were in this top 4 race, like these other teams are, and it doesn't go their way in the last 3 games, but they win that Copa, you can look at that as a successful season for Milan. But them being in ninth, unacceptable for a team like Milan with the players they have. And now they're going to have the same situation that possibly Juventus might have, where they're not going to be able to attract players. Can they keep a guy like Reinders? Can they keep a guy like Tio and Leao? Although, do they want to? Because they're inconsistency. Can they keep a guy like Mignon? So I know we've had ups and downs with them, but those are still players that are big names that want to play Champions League. That's going to be tough to keep with you not in the Champions League spot.
Yeah, definitely. And just to wrap on these, what do you think it ends up as? Talking through these teams, what do you think 4 to 9 looks like here? I think we both agree. Do you think Milan are 9 and Fiorentina are 8? Okay.
Yes.
So 4, 5, 6.
Well,
7,
we started with 9 to 8. So then let's go 7.
Yes.
Lazio.
I think Bologna beat Milan, Fiorentina, and Genoa, so they get 9 points. I think Roma are going to drop. I'm going to go Juve.
Oh my God. At what, 7?
I think Juve fall to 7.
Plugging. Okay, I have Lazio. You have Juve. 6. I have Bologna.
I have Lazio.
Okay. 5.
5. Bologna.
Roma.
You're leaving Juve 4, and that
I have to, dude. I'm a Juventini, baby.
And that puts, so you have Roma 5, Juve 4. I have Roma 4 then.
Yeah.
All right, it'll be interesting.
In both scenarios, Roma finishes above Lazio, which I called 20 weeks ago.
Yeah, you did. No, you nailed it. You're right. You're right. Quickly, we got to talk about the rest of this really quick. Just going to run through it. Notable mentions: Como, Torino, Udinese, Genoa, 10 to 13. I think they've all had solid seasons. Good things to point to. Udinese, I think is kind of fake news. I'm not a huge fan of them. But Genoa have been great under Patty Cakes, Patrick Vieira. Como, we've talked about enough this season. Torino, I'm going to keep talking about it. You're going to be sick of hearing about how much I like Torino coming into next season. So quick shout out to them. And just to talk about the relegation battle really quickly, Monza has officially been relegated. Empoli is in 19th on 25 points. Venezia on 18th on 26 points. So they're in the relegation spots right now. Just outside, we have Lecce on 27 points, and then kind of a little bit further away, 6 points clear, are Parma, Hellas, Verona, and then my beloved Cagliari are 7 points clear. So interesting stuff down there. A lot to play for. A lot of hard games coming up for all of those teams. But yeah, that brings us through the table. We got through a lot today, Mats.
We did. Also, last thing to make people aware of: another team got promoted to Serie A, Pisa, which is very close to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The stadium is, at least. So that's cool. So we got Sassuolo and Pisa so far that are coming up promoted. Congrats to both of them. They'll be in a very tight race with whoever's at the bottom of the table next year. Although Sassuolo might be able to finish mid-table. We'll see what happens. But last up is going to be the last segment, everybody's favorite segment, which is the
We don't have a button, but it's a Colpi di Luna.
Colpi. We've missed a lot of weeks on the Colpi. I
Yeah, we
can
missed a
tell
ton.
you that the super mega Colpi that we did before we left did not hit.
It did not go get
Juventus did not beat Parma.
And good thing we missed that game. But
Milan did not beat Atalanta. Pulisic did not score.
Teggy also did not score, although I thought he played well. Yeah, but let's get into it. Mott's computer is almost dead. He pinged me, so we got to go quick here.
We do. So I'll started off. Big game for Juventus. Faith is in their hands. So I'm riding with the boys. Juventus money line to the top, baby, to fourth place. Here we come. Plus 200. Juventus money line against Lazio in Rome.
I hate my pick after we just talked about all this, but I don't have time to change it, so we're riding it. I've got Fiorentina money line at Venezia plus 135. Idiotic pick. You should never bet against Venezia in Venice.
And they're in a relegation battle.
Right.
They're fighting to. They're 1 point behind Lecce, so that's gonna be tough. Also, Logan's pick's even worse than your pick because he's taking the under 2.5 in the Lazio Juve game. So we have 2 legs in one game. This is not a good Colpi.
I think there's goals in that game, to be honest with you. So I just don't like that one whatsoever.
Yeah,
that's it. That brings Colpi 11 plus 1190. Pretty good. But that's it for us, guys. An hour and a half in, pretty solid. We got a lot. We got a lot done in an hour and a half, so we're pretty happy with that. Happy to be back. We're going to be back on our regular schedule for the next couple of weeks, and then we're hitting the summer. We're still deciding what we're doing. We're definitely going to do some content.
Trying to change it up. Yeah, give you guys a little bit more content, maybe bite-sized pieces of content.
Yeah, for sure. But that's it for us. As always, guys, please leave us a review if you're still here. It helps us a lot. We got a lot of 5 stars. We got to keep those going on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Give us a subscribe. But we're back. We're happy to be back. It's going to be a crazy end to the season. And with that, Motts, take us away here.
Like, comment, subscribe. Just kidding. Do not be a gagoots in Forza Calcio culture. Also, really quick, let me redo that. Shout out our boy Vincenzo. Just want to give him a shout out. Now, do not be a gagoots in Forza Calcio culture. Bang, bang, bang.